Hello, everyone. Welcome to having a great conversation today about Nichiren Buddhism and how we use it to combat the uncertainties of present times. So if we could take a minute or two in silence to come together and to clear our minds. Thank you. So as we begin, I think it's important to give you a little bit of background on Nichiren Shonin, the founder of our order, because his life illustrates the reasons behind formation of his teachings for pandemic times. It can be said that when he was alive was considered the beginning of the latter age of degeneration of the Dharma. And his primary purpose in life was to restore what he thought was the true Dharma, to clean it up, to find a way to bring people together. And towards that end, he submitted writings to the government to find the correct teachings and follow it to overcome the sufferings of the people during that time, which are very similar to what we might call happening today. Diseases, poverty, hunger, death, bodies in the street, lots of conflict, foreign invasion. So he determined that the chanting of Namu Myoho Renge Kyo was the key. It was easily accessible to everyone, and it could be shared quite simply. And why he did this, he entered the monastery when he was about 12, and up until his, I think, 35th year, when he first chanted the O Daimoku for the first time, he studied all of the sutras, and he traveled around to different places to find even the most obscure of teachings, just to make sure he covered the entirety of the Dharma at that time. And he was severely persecuted. He was exiled. There were beheading attempts, assassination attempts of other kinds. And he was always in trouble with the government because of his stance on other traditions, as well as following the incorrect teaching. So when all of these things happened to him, when attempts were made to arrest him and exile him to different places, he took that to mean that he was on the correct path, that what was happening was the result of his own karma, and that the fact that it was showing up at the time was also a way to know that he was lessening the effect of the karma he had accumulated. And I'm not going to go deeply into the meanings of karma, but simply to say that his thinking was that this was showing him that he was on the correct path because things were much lighter than they could have been. And when his followers were included in the arrest and assassination attempts, there was a period where they were collecting the peasant followers who were illiterate, but who still had steadfast and firm faith. And there was a time when 3 of them were executed, were beheaded, and he took this as a sign for himself that the idea of faith in this teaching was firmly established because these people would not give up or renounce their faith in order to escape death. And there are passages in the Lotus Sutra which suggest that believers should, even at the expense of their lives, continue their faith and practice no matter what. So when this happened, he believed it was time to continue to encourage a kind of faith that was unshakable, that one would not give up faith simply to have a better life or simply to escape punishment. And because of that, this became the normative foundation of how Nichiren Buddhism is practiced to this day. And so the expression lessening karmic retribution is known as Tenju Kyoju. And what that means is that what shows up to your understanding and to your vision, if you will, so that you're able to see it, is a suggestion that it could be worse, but this is what you're dealing with at this moment. And this is simply the beginning, because we know if we tend to ignore the things that show up in our lives and say, well, that's not such a big deal, and we tend to dismiss it or deny it, that it will come back in another form, likely bigger, better. You know, it's like getting hit by a twig and then getting hit by a 2x4. And so this is how Nichiren Shonin taught his followers to understand that what showed up was something that they could deal with and that they had a choice on how they were handling it. And basically the fundamental premise was that one would just chant and overcome their problems. The second issue is changing poison into medicine, hendoku iyaku, meaning that whatever comes up, whatever shows up in your life can be the impetus for growth and change and even better days for you. And most of us, I think, can look at that and say, yeah, well, that kind of works. But a lot of times we tend not to consider how powerful it is to be able to be in the midst of a very serious, often very negative situation and find ourselves saying, I can deal with this, because somewhere in the midst of this situation is a benefit to me, something good for me to carry forward that will change my life. For example, very simple, I was driving through a blizzard one time and hit a patch of ice and skidded off the road and got stuck in the ice. And all I could do at that moment in my fear and desperation, because there was very little traffic, was to chant. And I continued to chant. And within 10 minutes, someone showed up in a Jeep with cables and pulled me out of the ditch. And that could be coincidence, but I took that to mean that my prayers were working and somehow I shifted the universe a little bit and was able to see a change in my ability to rely on my faith. So during this time of pandemic, it would be easy to sit at home and be frightened, to be worried constantly, to be simply wallowing in the fact that I can't go out, I can't do this, I can't do that. Instead, it has become a time for many of us to sit in reflection, to examine what it is that we can do at this time to change our lives, to be of service to others in particular. The other part of the teaching that Nichiren Shonin shared was that we are all bodhisattvas. We would not be here. We would not be sharing the Dharma, practicing the Dharma, were we not bodhisattvas of the earth. And his indication was that all of us somehow made a promise to the Buddha that we would be here to share the Dharma, to spread it, even at the cost of our lives. And so in this time of pandemic, it's incumbent upon us as Buddhists to take that very seriously, especially if we recite the Bodhisattva Vow day in and day out, that we vow to save the numberless beings. We vow to practice the Buddha's teachings. Using this as a compass for how we live our lives during the time of pandemic, we can safely say then, our actions should be based on best cases or best cause towards other beings. How can we save other beings in addition to saving ourselves? And the easiest way for us is to chant the Odaimoku, to sit in meditation, to practice, and continue to develop the lives of all of us as servants to ourselves and each other. This concept of Sangha in Buddhism is so critical because, especially in the West, I think we tend to think of ourselves as individual. And in communal societies, the individual is probably the least of it. The most important thing is the community. And when we often call ourselves the beloved community, following Dr. King and Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings, we have to wonder what that really is about and why the Buddha considered Sangha to be one of the three treasures. And it is because working together, practicing together, we are multiplied. We are also creating a space of safety for all of us. And so while we are at home, we can strengthen ourselves and open our hearts and our minds so that we are ready and willing to be able to connect with others. More important than anything that we could accumulate, anything that we can study, what's most important to all of us are the treasures that we accumulate by our hearts, through the connections that we have with each other. These are the precious gifts that we carry forward with us each and every time that we encounter negativity, bad situations, anything like that, even negative people, to be able to bow to the Buddha in that person and to really think of how we can show up as bodhisattvas, changing a negative situation into a positive. And sometimes it's very easy because we're able to smile at someone, thank someone, simply greet someone. We don't know what people are going through. But if we can carry with us our faith and our practice each and every time we encounter another being, then we can change any situation into a better one. I would like to share with you today the practice of Shodaigyo. And this is a practice that we do regularly. Shodai is chanting and Gyo is practice. So we will today conduct a Shodaigyo. And this form that I'll be using today is a very abbreviated form. And it's one that anyone can pick up on their own. And if you wish, I can send you a link to the document, which is not available right now, unfortunately. But we can begin with a period of silent meditation, and then followed by a period of chanting the Odaimoku. And we'll do that gradually, starting in 1 minute of Namu Myoho, breath, Renge Kyo, followed by breath, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, and then chanting slowly together at different paces. So that will take about, I'd say, 15 minutes altogether. And we will begin with silent meditation. So if you will, place the fingers of the left hand onto the fingers of the right hand. Whoop, can't see it that way. This is upside down. And complete the circle with your thumbs. And then if you will, rest your hands about 3 fingers width below your navel. I saw that. See if I can get that. Sorry. I'm putting in the chant into the chat. Thank you very much for reminding me. Make sure your back is upright. Your head is centered squarely over your body. And relax. It's not a competition. It is a time to feel the groundedness of your body and also the lightness as you imagine the energy flowing from earth to sky, through you and along your spine. As you begin to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And each cycle of breath, you can count to 10 during the in and out, so that each new breath in and out begins on 1. And our effort at this moment is to purify the mind and body so that we may receive the benefit of chanting the Odaimoku. Place your hands in Gasho as we now begin to chant the sacred title. First in two parts, then in one, then together. Namu Myo Renge Kyo. 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 Namu Myo Namu Myo Renge Kyo. 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 Please release your hands from Gasho. Return the fingers of the left on top of the fingers of the right, and complete the circle with your thumbs. And begin once again the cycle of breath. As we consider now the merit of chanting the O Daimoku, which brings us deeper and deeper into our refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The place where we have strength, wisdom, courage, patience, perseverance. And we also consider in particular the character Myo, meaning wonderful, also mysterious. Wonderful that it can bring joy and light to your life. Mysterious in that its method is unknown. It also means to open heart, open mind, to open circumstances. And it also means to be reborn, renewed, each and every day, each and every time the Daimoku is chanted, calling forth the refuge and the rebirth. As we begin silent meditation to deepen faith with the merit of the O Daimoku. And I will share this prayer. I respect you deeply. May you all be able to practice the way of bodhisattvas and become Buddhas. May the merits I have accumulated by this offering be distributed among all living beings, and may I and all other living beings attain the awakening of the Buddha. May the Dharma realms equally benefit all. Namu Myo Renge Kyo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bishop Myokei, for sharing that beautiful practice with us. So now we have time for Q&A.
Okay.
So everyone, if you have a question, please find the Q&A at the bottom of the screen and write it in there, and we will go through them one by one. One question that came up at the beginning, a few people didn't hear the name of the teachers you were speaking about, and Nichiren Shonin's name, so if you just wouldn't mind repeating that bit from the beginning.
Just Nichiren Shonin, Nichiren Dai Shonin, various names that he's called by. He was the founder of our order, a 13th century monk in Japan during the Kamakura era, which it was saw the beginnings of Zen and Jodo, the Pure Land schools. All of those came out of that particular time, and they all actually studied the Lotus Sutra.
Thank you. So one attendee, anonymous attendee, says, I don't see a statue of the Buddha on your shrine. What is the large calligraphic scroll?
That's the Amanda Gohonzon. And that is what is known in our circles as an object of veneration. It's one of the forms that we can use. The calligraphic scroll shows the ceremony in the air, which is one of the chapters of the Lotus Sutra. And it's when there was a great gathering, a great assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, well, actually everyone, because it goes through a long list of who was present. And at a particular moment, as the Buddha is teaching, a great stupa arises from the ground and lifts up into the sky. And I can come a little closer if you want to see, because another one is also represented there. Very quickly. What you see in the statuary right here, Tahoe is encased in the stupa as it arises from the earth, and it opens listening to the Buddha speaking, and he verifies the truth of everything he has to say. So that's one form of showing the Lotus Sutra and the ceremony in the air, sorry. And the Omandala describes who was present, and it also represents the ceremony in the air. And when we are chanting, we are all participating in the ceremony in the air, which continues for all eternity. Does that answer the question?
I believe it does, yes.
Okay.
If not, someone feel free to weigh in the comments or in the Q&A. So another anonymous attendee has a question. How do I know what is the right path? When I am used to the answer coming and it hasn't, how to know what is next?
Okay, I heard the first part, but the second part?
Mm-hmm. How do I know what is the right path? When I am used to the answer coming and it hasn't, how to know what is next?
I think one knows the right path when you feel that first moment of joy at encountering that path. And there is a joy because there is a recognition that this is it for me. Because I remember to this day when I first heard chanting, I was totally blown away and I knew I had to practice. And as to what comes next, one of the things I think as Buddhists that we are able to do is to deal with uncertainty. And that is not knowing what comes next, but being prepared for whatever comes up. And part of the faith practice, I believe, is developing the ability to trust yourself. Because we're always talking about, oh, I have to trust this person or that path or this or that. But the real true way of practice and living is to trust yourself, that you can handle it. We all come up with situations that just freak us out and we think, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And we go off into a panic. And my short ice story was a moment early on, fairly early in my practice, where I learned to trust my response, that I could trust I knew how to handle this. Even if I didn't know how to handle it, I knew how to chant. And I could chant, which would calm me down and then elevate my condition so that I was not in fear. And I was able to then make a plan, even if someone else hadn't shown up. But as time went on, I continued to develop a stronger trust in myself and my ability to use my practice to see me through. And so you have this great moment of joy and a moment also where you can understand that sometimes you just have to substitute faith for wisdom, that you may not know everything, but you certainly have faith, and faith can carry you through a whole host of things. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much for that answer. There are a few questions asking for you to state again the name of the chant and asking if there are any good English language texts or any resources to consult.
Yes. We call it the O Daimoku. Daimoku means title, sacred title, and O is an honorific that is attached to it to show our reverence. It is Namu, which means devotion to or respect for. Myoho is wonderful Dharma. Renge is lotus flower. And Kyo is sutra. So we respect the sutra of the lotus flower of the wonderful Dharma. There are many different translations. The Lotus Sutra is found, many different versions. There's a Kern version, Reeves. The one we use in Nichiren Shu is the Murano version. And let's see, the Kato version, the threefold Lotus Sutra. There are websites available. I will put them in the chat. One in particular, of course, I'm biased, of course. And hope that you will find what you're looking for there. I'll have to look it up real quick because it's a portal to Japan, but it also has a link to all the temples here in the United States. So I will put that up there.
Thank you so much. And I'll also mention for anyone who's interested that Bishop Myokei recorded a Dharma Talk series on this subject of chanting the Daimoku and the Lotus Sutra for Tricycle, which was just released in February. And it's a wonderful, wonderful series. So I'll put that link in the chat as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So are you ready for another question?
Sure.
Great. So John Crossland is asking, how necessary is a literal belief in rebirth to practice within Nichiren Shu? Thank you.
How I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
How necessary is a belief in rebirth?
Oh, not at all. You don't need to believe in anything. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. So
maybe that wasn't satisfactory. That the simple thing is that we ask people to try it. Just see what happens. Conduct your own experiment of practicing the Lotus Sutra. It doesn't require belief, because your belief will develop at your pace. And, you know, what did the Buddha say? That don't believe everything you hear, find out for yourself. And so we adhere to that, absolutely. Find out for yourself. Believe what you will. We don't know everything.
thank you. Diana is asking, is there a community in the US? I assume a Nichiren community question.
It depends on where you live. Most of our communities were East and West Coast based, and followed, you know, the folks that were interned in the internment camps. So that's where you will find them, generally speaking. But there's a new crop that came in within the last 20 years of Western priests. So we're scattered across the United States. But if there's not one in your area, we are all online and broadcasting. So you're able to join us whenever you'd like. Excuse me.
Wonderful, thank you. So Rob has a question relating to chanting. He asks, how much time in your day is devoted to chanting? Is it the same amount of time every day?
It depends on what's going on in my life. Fundamentally, it's at least for me, an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. And that's doing full service, doing my own practice, because I chant the Lotus Sutra itself. And I may chant any one of the 28 chapters that are there. And, you know, if it's a good day, I may just have 30 to 45 minutes. Like I said, it depends. Sometimes I have a greater need to just chant, and I may just chant, you know, 1 or 2 chapters of the sutra, and without stopping, just keep it going. So, yeah, it's pretty much up to you as a beginner. We suggest maybe 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening. Or if you're doing the Shodaigyo practice, sometimes people just begin by chanting 5 minutes of the Odaimoku. So it's up to you how you begin and how you continue. If you're at a temple, it will probably be a 30, 40-minute service in community.
Thank you. So I believe we have time for one more question. So there's one that I think a lot of people are grappling with during this coronavirus time. Vera is asking how to deal with fear.
Fear, yeah. I think the biggest thing, I chant about fear a lot because I'm in one of the groups that's supposed to be more vulnerable. Again, chanting helps me to become grounded and to also understand that my fear is based on clinging. And sometimes I think because we don't talk about death in our societies, that we're afraid of it. And I can remember when my father passed away that I was so terrified to see him. And so, you know, when that happened, it became another learning situation where I realized that this was just a body and it was not the person, but I had nothing to fear. And since then, I have accompanied folks who have died. And so I have less fear of death and more fear of being incapacitated. But I also know that from chanting, what I fear is something that I can handle because of my faith and practice. And to really understand that the fearing is a way of dealing with situations we have no knowledge of. But our practice allows us to continue to persevere, to become stronger in knowing that we are doing what we need to do 100% for our own benefit, for our own growth and development. So as time goes on, I think that you will find that even fear is a gift because it teaches us where we have vulnerable areas in our lives, the things that we haven't addressed, the things that we haven't really paid any attention to throughout the course of our lives. And a lot of these fears come up from things that happened to us a long time ago. And we just never had the wherewithal to deal with it. So when it comes up, it's something we can look at and, as Nichiren Shonin would say, change that poison into good medicine for our growth. We can use our fear and continue to step out each and every day. I see the answers happening. Nichiren Shu does sponsor retreats throughout the country, and sometimes we do have national retreats as well as regional retreats for those folks who are interested in taking a deep dive. They're usually about a week long. Thanks, Erica. I hope that fear question at least touched on something that might be helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Would you like to add any last closing before I go into our final announcements?
Sure. I thank you all for showing up today and hope that somehow what I shared was able to provide you some support for what you're going through right now. Please know that the Sangha of Buddhists in this country, all of us are working and praying and chanting and whatever we can to really change the course of lives for everyone around us. We are all showing up, understanding that we have to operate together with one mind towards the unification and peace and health of our country. So please join us. We will have an international global 24-hour chant on June 6th. And Stephen, I see that you're out there, so if you'll put that up there, hopefully you can join us beginning June 6th to participate in a 24-hour chant to heal the world. Let's do this together. Thank you. Namu Myo Renge Kyo.